the May meeting of the Asheville-Buncombe Air Quality Agency Board of Directors to order. First of all, the number one agenda item is a public comment protocol announcement, which I will read. Public comment will be taken at the end of each board meeting. Persons wanting to address the board should sign up on the sheet provided. Speakers will be called in the order they are signed up. Comments should be limited to specific topics relevant to the board. At the board's discretion, limited comment may be allowed on individual agenda items during the course of the meeting as invited by the chair. All board meetings shall be recorded, including public comment periods. And our sign-up sheets over there on that table, we'll take a look at that at the end of the meeting. So the second item is adjustment and approval of the agenda. We've got a couple of agenda items on here. I'll just give you a preview. We've got our FY 2025 budget amendment, which we presented at the previous meeting, and we'll hope to take some action on that today. And then the Board of Commissioners at their Tuesday meeting approved a reduce to rebuild proposal as a result of Hurricane Helene, and part of that proposal that they approved included some financial impacts on our board, our agency. So we're going to have a discussion about that in Ashley's report a little bit later on. So with that, I'll oh, by the way, Carl is not going to be able to join us today. Because his granddaughter is graduating from college, I believe. So he won't be with us today. But with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda today. Motion by Gary. Second by Ned. Any further discussion or adjustment of the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, consent agenda is our March 18th meeting, with the minutes of which are in your packet. If you've had a chance to review those, I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Motion by Ned. Do I have a second? Second by Gary. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, unfinished business. The first one here, and this is a bit of my oversight from last meeting. We have a budget amendment since we had to move some money over from the truck that we purchased was a little bit more, I believe, than we'd originally budgeted. So we had to move some money around. We had a pretty extensive discussion about that, and I had thought we'd already made a motion in a second on that, and we were just in discussion. But Hannah was listening to the recording and I realized that nobody had ever made a motion. So that's a bit retroactive, but at this point, unless there's any more discussion we need to have about that, I'd entertain a motion to approve that. Motion by Gary. Second by Ned. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, knock that out and we can sign this, right?
Yes.
Get that in. Okay. So consideration of the 2026 budget, and this is another item we talked about in our March 18th meeting, and we've included that in your packet again. There's a couple of adjustments in that since that period of time, and I'll let Ashley explain those since she'll do a better job than I can.
Okay, thanks, Joel. So in the packet, we do have an updated ordinance, and Hannah put together a table that shows the far right columns are what we presented in March of 2025. This is for the FY 26 budget that starts July 1. And then we have a second column on the right that's the proposed, what we're presenting now in May, and we've highlighted what's changed. The bottom line is it's about, I think it's $3,750 that was for an intern, which we had an internship last year, and we reported to the board that we were not proposing to have an intern again this year. But what we discovered later was that our budget analyst had not subtracted that out. So we had them update that. So the bottom line here is, in addition to that, there were a few other minor adjustments to salaries and benefits and wages that the county calculated, pretty minor there. We did shift some funds from contract and professional services to temporary employment. But that did not change the total there. So that's the summary of the changes. If anybody has any questions, we also updated the actual ordinance itself to have the more up-to-date numbers.
Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the FY 2026 budget.
Motion.
Motion by Gary,
Second.
second by Ned. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. We got a budget for next year. That's great. Okay, and then the third unfinished business item is the surplus ozone monitoring equipment. And you might remember we were talking about donating that to UNCA, but there was some discussion about we need to advertise that a little bit more broadly. I'm going to recognize Steve to give us the details on that since our last meeting.
So we have, excuse me, I'm covering over a cold. We had some spare ozone equipment that's going to be two calibrators, a monitor, and a zero calibration unit. And we have new equipment already. We're going to replace the equipment that's in the field right now. And so we felt like we, could surplus this equipment. We brought that up at the last meeting, and I believe it was Ned that wanted us to offer that to all of the schools in the county. And so I did that since the last meeting. I sent out an email to someone at each of the institutions that you mentioned. And the only response that we got was from UNCA. And so I guess, we just want to move forward with
And those other institutions were AB Tech, I believe, and
AB Tech
Warren Wilson.
Warren Wilson and is it Montreat? I think it was Montreat.
Montreat. Okay.
Yeah.
So it seems like we checked that box, and the UNCA has expressed interest. So yeah, I would entertain a motion to approve that. Now, before we do that, though, since we can't dispose of property ourselves, this will have to go before the Board of Commissioners at the next meeting to basically ratify our decision. Is that right, Ashley?
Correct.
Okay. So with that, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Gary. Second. Second by Ned. Any further discussion?
I'm just recusing myself.
We'll put that in the minutes that Caitlin recused herself because she's a UNCA employee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Okay, on we move into the director's report. Got quite a few things to talk about, Ashley.
Okay, thanks, Joel. I was going to do a brief update on our move to 35 Woodfin. So we did move last month. You can tell the building is pretty empty here. Permits and inspections, air quality, planning, environmental health. We've all moved over there. We were not able to move our lab. The basement or the ground floor is still not completely finished. And what's in the ground floor, in addition to the air quality lab, are going to be the board meeting spaces. There's some other spaces that elections uses down on the ground floor. And there's emergency services has an ambulance that they keep there that's been there. But essentially that ground floor is not ready yet. And so we are still using our lab that's here at the Register of Deeds building. So we're going back and forth, but hoping to get in. I think that they're hoping to get everything finished by July. So hopefully our July board meeting will be over there and we will be moved in. We have asked them to let us go ahead and move into the lab before everything is completely finished, just because we've had everything packed in boxes and it's getting a little difficult now to function with everything. We don't really want to unpack and repack. So they're being very accommodating and hoping that we can get the movers lined up. It still has to be some cleaning done. It's been kind of dusty there. So we're working through some challenges, just getting mail and things like that. Anytime you move, we've got several different departments. And so, but everything's going well. And again, we're still working out the kinks and everything and figuring out getting access to all the different doors and places. But it's a nice space and we're glad to be moved in. So Ned came by and visited us. He was in the area, so he's been by, but you guys should come by and get a tour. Mike is on the first floor. Mike was not able to be here today. The rest of us are up on the second floor and it's limited access. So just let us know if you're coming, or we do have signs directing people to come into that first floor main area where permits and inspections and environmental health, similar, to this area that we had here. So I think that's pretty much where we're at right now. So.
And there's visitor parking over there in front.
Yes, the garage is next door, but customers for that main area for the building permits, air quality, environmental health, they're all asked to park in that surface lot on Woodfin Street, across from the Baptist Church and the YMCA, if you know where that is. So there's plenty of parking. And if you happen to be on the other side and you want to park in the garage, you can, but you do have to pay to park in the garage. There's been plenty of spaces, so it shouldn't be a problem. We did have our advisory committee meeting there, and that was a week or two ago. We'll talk more about that later, but we have one meeting room set up, and there's some additional meeting rooms that are being set up with technology for meetings that we share with other departments. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the reduce to rebuild proposal, and that's for permit fee modifications. We put several items in the packet for that, so you guys should have seen that. Basically, the county was getting questions. They did a presentation, and we're really wanting to give some relief for residential customers that have suffered damages from Helene. Some of the counties are charging permit fees and some aren't still. If you guys remember, after the storm, the General Assembly passed a bill that said counties and cities could not charge any kind of building related permit fees to those affected by the storm. And so none of us charged fees, but come January 1st, Buncombe County and our agency started charging our regular fees again. And so in the proposal, they looked at other areas. City of Asheville has not been charging fees. They just did not start charging fees back. There are other surrounding counties and cities. Some, it's kind of a mix. Some are charging, some aren't. And so they wanted to provide some regulatory relief in the way of a 50% reduction starting now or June 1st until the end of the year. And this would just be for owner-occupied dwellings, residential, and it would have to be verified. In order to qualify, you would have to either have had your home assessed by FEMA or the county. And so we have databases where we will be checking that. We've already got a system in Excella, which is the system that the county uses for building permits, environmental health, for air quality. We use that for our demo permits and asbestos removals, where you can check a box if your permit is Helene related. So we have that built in, but under this proposal, we would be closely verifying. We would check that against databases to make sure that somebody did in fact have the damage from Helene. And so the county commissioners approved those changes for environmental health, permits and inspections and planning at their meeting on Tuesday. But our fees are determined by our board. And so this is before you tonight. We're recommending approval. We think that we have presented some numbers here, and they're very conservative. I think they're as if all of these residential structures would be handled as residential jobs, when in fact a good bit of these would be commercial jobs, because they're being torn down as a result of FEMA programs like the buyout program and the private property debris removal program. So we currently have quite a few, over 100 permits in-house with FEMA and the Corps and the county, the city and Black Mountain, for over 100 structures that are residential that will not be getting this discount because they are not residential jobs unless they're brought in like one house for one person. That's because they fall under the federal asbestos NESHAP And that's how our fee structure is. So it does look like a big number, but we think the number would actually be less. And we did not account for any of this extra revenue that we would not have gotten had a lien not happen in the current budget.
Yeah, this is, it took me a while to understand this.
And if you want me to walk you through
And
these
and
numbers,
I think it'd be good
I
for
can explain.
Ashley to walk us through I guess they're the air quality numbers that the county calculated is in your packet. I'm not sure what page that is. But it's
if you're looking at the large packet,
it's under the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners request for board action section. And then there's a spreadsheet, the second page in.
there's 64 pages in the full PDF of the packet, and it's page 22, and it says
Okay.
reduce to rebuild estimates for air quality. Essentially, the county had taken the FEMA numbers. These are numbers for residences that were minor damage, moderate, major damage, and destroyed. And for demolition purposes, we're just looking at destroyed and major damage. There's 897 that are major damage. That a lot of those might not be actually torn down. They might be rebuilt. So it's very conservative. And most of our residential fees are the $200. If you look the next page, well, somewhere in here, we've got the line through strikeout. Most of our residential demolitions are $200. The $480 is a fee that could occur if there was known asbestos, like if the house had asbestos siding or boiler insulation or something of that nature. But most residents would be paying the $200, not $480.
Yeah. And like you said, this represents max utilization of the program.
Right.
Yeah. So the real financial impact is somewhat less. I'm sure it's hard to guess at this point what that financial impact, but this is basically the maximum impact from the program to the board.
Yeah, two things. Remember, this is you only get a 50% discount on the fee. Number
Correct.
one. And then number two, the destroyed part of it, the 480, that may include a number of residences that are dictated as commercial, right? So
Correct.
if so, they wouldn't get the discount anyway.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
number three, there's a bunch of, we were using the Wendy's example. Wendy's got torn down in Biltmore Village. Well, that's a commercial project, and
Correct.
so that wasn't going to be revenue for us anyway.
Correct.
Because assuming the hurricane never happened, Wendy's doesn't go away.
Right.
So bottom line, I mean, this $120,000 that they say is potentially an impact to our budget is way high.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably more like 20,000. at the
Yeah,
most.
and strategy and innovation calculated it that way because they need to show the commissioners and our board the worst case number that it could possibly be when we're looking at potential revenue reduction. So I think the realistic number, instead of 127,000, I would guess, I'm just guessing, probably more like 30,000. But on the other hand, right now we have about $40,000 worth of fees from structures that haven't been torn down yet that would be included in this number, that are going to be handled under FEMA and the Corps and their contractor, that we are going to be getting those permit fees when we issue those permits. So that's additional revenue that we weren't planning to get, that we are going to be getting because of the storm. So I think it really offsets it. And
let's open it up to broader discussion by the board if y'all have any concern about that, because it is a little, it's super conservative for sure.
Okay, I have a concern, which I think I voiced last time, that somewhere in the near future, we need to address how we're going to increase funding so that we don't dip into the bank and get it down to zero in the next 2-3 years.
That's still out there, Nick. Yeah.
I know it's still out there, but we need to figure out a way to address it.
A couple of years ago, maybe it's been 3 or 4 now, we had a retreat just to talk about that. And maybe it's time to schedule one of
Could
those.
be.
again.
But obviously, if we're getting less money in from fees or permits or whatever, now, if it's not quite a wash, that reduces the fund balance even more.
I mean, I would wager this year that with what Ashley just explained, with all the structures that are gonna be torn down that we didn't have in our budget to begin with, we're gonna add to the fund balance. That's just
Well,
a
yeah,
prediction on my end.
I'm agreeable to waiting and seeing what happens, but the bottom line is sooner or later, we will not have enough money.
Oh, yeah, it's still a wasting asset, no
Yeah.
doubt about that.
Yes, it is a concern.
Anybody else? Nice. Caleb?
We, in addition to that, since we're talking about the budget, we are still waiting for our funds from EPA Region 4. They're late this year. So we are supposed to get level funding for this budget year, but normally we would have got those by now. And they've had some staff turnover. Other regions have given out their funds and we still haven't received ours. But we are going to be going to the directors meeting in June. And the budget year will be over at the end of September. So we're expecting an update then, hoping that we'll have an award soon. So
And then just to answer your concerns more directly, maybe we can schedule a retreat in the fall when we have more of these numbers known.
Fall, spring.
Okay, well,
Winter,
sooner rather than
sometime.
later, I think. Yeah, I could commit to that.
It's huge hail outside right now.
Oh my God.
Huge.
I can see, oh, I can see it. Oh my God.
Huge what?
Hail.
In the garage.
Yep, so,
That's huge.
yes, it's really large. It looks like golf balls.
Every part of me wants to run outside.
Yeah, if anybody, want to run outside,
Well,
It's too late.
I don't know what you can
Yeah.
do.
nothing. Hope that your windshield stays intact, I guess.
That's golf ball.
Right.
That's
Is it
big.
really golf ball?
Yeah,
Oh, it's big.
we should open the, we should prop the
Open
door open so
let's
we can
at least
see
let's
out.
look at it. That's kind of unusual, isn't it?
In Asheville
Yeah.
ever. You don't normally see it this big. That's
Let's adjourn for just a minute to go look.
Let's go look.
Still big. Probably.
Got a new car. I can't call the insurance company. Tell them I need more money. I'm never gonna get insurance again. It's still going too.
Oh, yeah, I've got it.
Well, you said retreat in fall or spring, right?
Fall.
Fall.
Yeah. Yeah, before the end of the year for sure. And lots in the past, what we did, we just picked an actual regular scheduled board meeting and we met like an hour before. So it wasn't like we had to commit another particular stretch of time we
Mhm.
could, but it just seemed easier that way.
Yeah, and fall is helpful because we have to start planning for the next budget year, in September, October. You know, there are certain things we have to submit for and,
And
so,
we'll know the impact of the fund balance at that point for this
Yeah.
current year that we're in. So where were we with this? So nobody had any more questions about the
reduce to rebuild.
the reduce to rebuild? But what I will say is that since our bylaws are so antiquated, we can't have Zoom meetings when we take action on things. We're going to have to schedule, first of all, we're going to have to put a public notice out that we're going to make this change if we do approve it. And then we'll have to schedule a special meeting in June to assuming we don't have any public comment to actually adopt it. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I
so-
checked with Amy and she's nodding.
And so, Ashley and I already looked at another potential date for that. It wouldn't be a very long meeting, but what do we say, Ashley? Maybe we can make that part of the motion. Potentially. We were looking at the 16th or 17th of June
So
at 4 o'clock,
Monday or Tuesday.
Monday or Tuesday. Can everybody here do that if we do pass it?
June 16 or 17, yeah.
Which,
Of which month?
June, next month.
Not sure I'll be able to.
Okay.
We're not sure about Carl, but we could,
Also three, right?
we need at
Well,
least
we have
3 board
three.
members.
If the three of us can be there, then maybe that could work. Which day, Gary or Caitlin, would be better for y'all?
Doesn't matter.
Tuesday is usually better for us because it gives us a day to,
Okay, from the weekend, okay.
but either
June
one
17th.
will work for us.
Let's talk about, let's do June 17th.
That's at 4
What's that?
PM.
4 PM, yeah. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the recommendations of the what's it called again?
Reduce to
Reduce to
rebuild.
rebuild proposal, permit fee modification. Including the notion that we would go to public notice and meet again on June 17th at 4 o'clock here.
And that meeting will be just to approve this after the 30-day notice. Is that what that meeting is for?
That's right. That's right.
The one action.
This be one action. Hopefully we wouldn't have anything else on the agenda.
Okay.
And it would probably need to
Wait.
be here because I don't think that the meeting room will be ready over at 35 Woodman yet.
Okay. Motion by Gary,
Second.
second by Caitlin. Caitlin gets in there. Any further discussion? And the motion again is to accept the recommendations and then the public notice goes out and then we meet again on the 17th at 4 o'clock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay. All right, Ashley, number 3.
Okay, so number 3 is the post-Helene recovery update. And the biggest thing, you know, we're still very busy with air curtain incinerators, trying to keep up with those. It's been a few months now and there's requirements for, I mean, right now we're still operating under the regulatory relief from EPA where we don't have to have, or they don't have to have Title V permits to operate those until September the 1st. So that's helpful, but there are requirements to do basically like a method 9 EPA emissions test on these units if they've been operating for 6 months. So we're approaching those. They don't have permits. They just have letters. We're finding new ones all the time. So that's keeping us really busy. And the one over at the Riverside Stump Dump that's really close to our monitoring site, Steve and Allison have been checking on that one daily, or not daily, weekly. But they have not been operating that one. So we're very busy with those and trying to really need to come up with some new processes. We've been in meetings. There are some things called biochar units that you may have seen. There was a Tiger Cat unit. You may have seen it on WLOS. Was that, I believe it was Wednesday morning it was on. And it's essentially an air curtain incinerator that's been modified to produce a product called biochar. And Steve went and saw the demonstration for us, which was really helpful. And, you know, the ash from an air curtain incinerator can be put on farmers' fields, but this biochar is more beneficial and it looks like charcoal. And so the soil scientists are really promoting it. It's very, very interesting, but it is subject to the air quality rules. And so we'll have to get notifications for those. There's a lot of interest from the Forest Service in using those. We were in a meeting with Department of Ag, Forest Service, lots of different folks. And these units are very expensive. The Forest Service is very concerned about all of the debris that's down on the ground, and they think that we need 6 or 8 of these operating 24/7 for a few years to deal with all the debris. And so it's very interesting. That's the newest thing in our Helene update is tracking. There's one over in Haywood County that's operating. We don't have one over here yet, but we're trying to keep up with that. And you might also hear about there are other biochar units that Appalachian State and others are promoting that are like, it's kind of like a big tub where we consider that open burning. So not all biochar is air curtain incinerators. So we're learning all kinds of new stuff. So either way, air curtain incinerators, we're continuing to promote those as an alternative to open burning because there's a lot less smoke. So we're staying busy with those. And we're receiving more requests for open burning of storm debris. Again, there's a lot of open burning of storm debris where we're not receiving requests, but we are just, as we find those, just making sure that they have the 500 feet setback and that they're burning legal materials. So we've been busy with that. And then what we've been even more busy with since we last met is the demolition permits for the FEMA program. And I might have to get James to help us with the numbers. Mike's not here, and I'm trying to find the spreadsheet, but we have, is it 140 or so? Typically, the way that Excella is set up is a contractor goes in and enters information for a structure that they're going to demolish. But when we get 150 of these at one time from FEMA, we are entering them ourselves. We have several people entering the data because if we let them enter it, then we will have to go back and check it, and it will take longer. So it's sort of an all hands on deck trying to get these hundreds of demolition permits through our system. And so right now, of course, there's issues with FEMA, who's going to be responsible and sign the permits. We're waiting on them. We have the permits and everything, ready to go on our end. So FEMA has to award contracts, and then the contractor has to be the one to sign and be responsible for the work. So we're sort of a waiting game. The most recent thing we heard is that there are issues with insurance companies now, that they want to get those worked out. And we're required to get wet ink signatures. It's a federal requirement. And so we are trying to stress that to the county and Black Mountain, City of Asheville and FEMA that, we'll bring you the stack whenever you're ready to sign. We have to get all that through Excella and import it in before we can issue the permit. So we have weekly meetings. The Buncombe County debris team does have these meetings, and we are participating in those because that's part of that work.
Yeah, I mean, just numbers wise, I think we processed close to, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm pretty close. Probably roughly 85 or so permit applications. We've probably got another 25 or so on deck to process. These are through Black Mountain, City of Asheville, and Buncombe County. I've heard totals could approach 175 at the end of it. And all those are part of their residential homes, but because the way the federal rules are structured, if one group is doing all of them, they have to be treated as commercial, and which makes them subject to NESHAP, which is why we have to go through this big process where we have to get the wet signature. Federal regulations for asbestos require that wet signature, and so we're pretty close to getting that part of it started. Again, there's just been a little back and forth about who needs to sign it over on FEMA's side. But I think the process will probably be done or at least our side of the process will be done by the end of June. I have heard that they can still do work past June, but the idea is to have all of the applications ready to go by the end of June. So.
And of course, there's a lot of pressure to get to get the work done. And I don't know, Tim, if you have anything that you want on the county side, but I know that there was interest in how much the federal government pays versus how much the local governments have to pay. And I'm not sure where that all comes into play with these demolitions because they are in process. So, but we're just trying to make sure that we're not holding anything up and that we've got everything covered on our end so that we will be ready to issue the permits as soon as they are ready to take responsibility for them. And beyond that, we have had about a 50% increase in complaints. We're tracking number of complaints on this neighborhood built environment group. The county is having some more resources for recovery type functions, town hall functions that we plan to participate in out in the community to try to increase awareness of all the different issues that are facing the community where we are involved. That's basically air quality awareness, open burning, dust. We're getting a lot of complaints about asphalt odor still. Steve went out on an asphalt odor complaint last week, and the asphalt plants are still running about double production as usual. So that's keeping us busy too. And the county has a survey out they're asking for input from residents through the end of May that you might have seen. I'm glad to send the link out, how you would like to see the community rebuilt. So please keep that in mind. Any questions about any of that? Okay, so the next item, let's see, is Air Quality Awareness Week. This is Air Quality Awareness Week. The commissioners did issue a proclamation for us, which was great. We really appreciate that. That's in the board packet and it's over there on the desk. We're doing some social media posts. Johanna is here in the back from Cape. She's been doing some posts for us and we got some good suggestions from the advisory committee and she put together some information about air curtain incinerators for one. People are hearing about those, and if you drive by, you might think, gee, somebody's burning in a big dumpster when really it's an air curtain incinerator, and it's a good way to get rid of storm debris and it makes less smoke. So Johanna did one of those for us, a post for us on that this week. And we're just trying to send out a lot of social media posts. The EPA campaign is out this week. So I appreciate the county supporting us on that. And then the next thing is the Clean Air Excellence Awards recommendations. We did meet and look at those, and I think we'll maybe just let Ned cover those in his update when we get to the advisory committee, if that's all right, Ned. Clean air compliance recognition. We have a memo in the board packet. We do that every year where we recognize facilities that are in compliance with their permits for the whole year. So we have a list of 50 plus facilities that we're going to be sending out certificates to. And next up is monitoring update.
Still on.
I see the red light.
Okay. Don't have a whole lot. I want to update you about the completeness for the year so far for the BAM PM 2.5 at Board of Ed. We're at 97% completeness for the year so far, and at the ozone side of Bent Creek, we're 95. We do lose some completeness in that every day when the auto cal runs. So we lose 1 hour every day regardless. So you'll never be close to 100 on the ozone. And I wanted to discuss, go to the other slide, James, the one more. No, okay. I thought I sent the forecast. My mistake. So March 28th, we had a forecast for a code red for, I guess this is it. Okay. Thanks, for Asheville. and, or for Buncombe County, I should say. And it did not end up being a code red day. No big graph up. However, outside of our regulatory monitor where we're running the EBAMs, we got one in Fairview and there's another one in Swannanoa. They did go over the standard for the day. This is 24-hour values. So I think that was an issue, that monitor is a little further east of those and a little further north, and was just out of the smoke plume from those forest fires for that day. So it's hard to see on this graph, but the Board of Ed BAM, that's the BDED BAM, is the dark one. As you can see, it's below the standard, but I think the two that went above was the Fairview EBAM and the is the EBAM ARO, which is located in Swannanoa at the Asheville Regional Office of Air Quality. So again, those aren't regulatory monitors, but they do give us good quality data. We also had some significant particular occur on the purple airs, different places that we've got them, but of course they're not regulatory either. But I think our network did a good job, between the purple airs that we deployed and the EBAMs of, giving us more pinpoint accuracy about, what residents are seeing close to them. So we're glad to have that equipment from EPA and from the state, to supplement our network. So
With the historical data, do you make any kind of a notation that this was due to wildfires, that you were seeing these spikes during that time?
yes, well, so one of the things that the state does, and they sort of administer our data for us to EPA, and they have us make notations on the data. Monthly, we do a data validation process where we'll flag, if you will, data that has been affected by, smoke, for instance, or any other occurrence that might have impacted the data. And they'll use that data, that information to, let's see, what's the wording, James? Would you say they exceptional event? Sorry, I couldn't come up with the word. So they term that as exceptional event, and they'll exclude that from the attainment designation if they accept our proposal. We'll send this information. We'll say on this date, we were influenced by this smoke event. They'll provide meteorological data. They'll provide, smoke maps, and EPA will yay or nay on that and either choose to exclude it or allow it. But typically, I think they only do that if they think we're going to exceed the annual standards. So a lot of times, the flags will go through, but they won't do the destination. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, sure did.
Okay. That's really all I had, unless anybody had any further. I included this slide just because, you see the code red, the code orange and green, and they have a number associated with them. But this table also shows the concentration range. And I find that helpful because that's what I typically think of when I'm looking at data. I'm looking at concentrations, and they assign an AQI number to it. 101 to 150 is unhealthy. Well, it's just kind of an arbitrary number to me, but in actuality, that's, below 55.4 to 35.5 micrograms per cubic meter. So when you're looking at a 24-hour average for an instrument, that's the range that will put you in that AQI category for that day. So, but anybody have any other questions?
Thanks, Stephen. I just point out that sometimes it's confusing because the meteorologists try to be as conservative as possible, and they forecasted us code red that day. And we did see, and Steve, correct me if I don't get this right, the EBAMs over on the east side they did get up to code red.
Right.
However, in town, our regulatory monitors were under, or no, they went over for
So
a few hours.
that's the reason I guess I included that now that I'm seeing it. The 55.5 is the concentration threshold for the red. And so you can see that's this one monitor, the one that's at the EBAM Fairview, was over that threshold, which put it in the red. And so I just wanted to make that connection between the concentration, which is, actually that's 30, that should be, I can't even see, is that 55? Yes, 55. So it was above the 55.5 range, which put it just into the red threshold, which is unhealthy. But we did have purple airs as well that were showing, red values. Of course, you get instantaneous data with those. And there was some really high numbers, hourly values that we were observing. So it's good to have those, and the forecasters rely on those quite a bit, I think, in making judgments. They, use the regulatory data mainly, but I think they look at those purple air values to inform their decisions. And I think that was one of the reasons they went with red that day.
I think it was. I think it's really helpful. And I just wanted to point out that it's a lot of extra work on the team. Steve and Allison are out in the field just doing the regular monitors, but then we've got the extra EBAM out in Fairview and all these purple airs. We have 8 of them now. So Steve drove to Barnersville today to troubleshoot the purple air because the Wi-Fi, he thinks, went down. So really appreciate all the extra work that they're doing, and they're doing a great job. Allison had to go out. Somebody, these EBAMs, we had a cord at the Fairview Elementary School. Somebody was mowing the grass and chewed up the cord with the lawnmower. So Allison had to go out and get the new, go out and troubleshoot that and get that running again this week. So they're just doing a really great job, and I appreciate them and all the team, Alex too, and Mike and James on these asbestos and demolition permits. Everybody's doing a great job. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I guess the last part of my back to Helene update is I am going to Texas to the National Air Quality Meeting next week. They're paying my way to come and talk about Helene relief. I think I mentioned this last board meeting. They're also going to have folks from the California wildfires and the battery plant fire. So it's going to be interesting. So, not exactly the group you want to be part of, but I'm excited to go, and they're paying my way. So.
What part of Texas is it?
It's in Houston.
Okay, so moving on to the facility permit renewals, we have 2. Actually, the first one is not a renewal; it's somewhat of an extension.
It is actually a renewal.
Is it actually a renewal? Okay, I'm gonna punt it to you. Go for it.
Okay, so this is Red Clay Industries. We have portable crushers that are subject to federal standards, and a lot of these crushers don't actually get jobs and work in Buncombe County, but they maintain the permit just so that they can have permission to operate when they do come into the county. So a lot of times we don't have an inspection report for these because they might not have operated here for a while, and so that's why there's just a memo in the packet explaining that, but they have asked to keep their permit active. So we're recommending renewing it. The permits have to be renewed every 8 years for these small sources. So
I want to make a motion to approve this renewal.
Motion.
Gary,
Second.
second by Ned. Any discussion? Pretty straightforward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Okay.
Introduce the next one, actually.
So the next is a modification of the BB Hedrick gravel and sand quarry, and I'll let James tell you about.
Thanks,
it.
Ashley. No, it's fine. This is, to go back just slightly on the Southern Concrete has had a concrete batch plant in the Weaverville area for decades, I would say, at least 25, 30 years, maybe longer. That land, I believe, was not owned by them. So that land is being turned into, I cannot remember what it is, but basically they had to find another place for their concrete batch plant. Their parent company is BP Hedrick. Hedrick owns Southern Concrete. So they decided, not unlike other concrete batch plants in the county, it's very ideal to have a concrete batch plant located next to a quarry, because some of the material at the quarry is being directly used by the concrete batch plant. So ideal, it's a very ideal location for them. So they've decided to move to the same site that Hedrick was, and we made a determination that because Hedrick is Hedrick owns Southern Concrete, and they're related type companies, that they all needed to be under one permit. So instead of modifying a Southern Concrete batch plant permit, we're modifying a Hedrick permit to add the concrete batch plant to their existing quarry permit. So they'll have a permit in which a quarry is operating and a batch plant is also operating on, contiguous land. It's all owned by Hedrick. So, so if you have any questions about this, just let me know.
James, I noticed so the classification goes from small to synthetic minor. Can you expand on that?
Sure. The potential to emit for the before adding the concrete batch plant for Hedrick was below 100 tons, roughly 92 tons. Of course, that's potential to emit. That would be assuming they ran 87, 60 hours, which is every hour of the year. That's what potential to emit means. Very few companies ever run 24/7. Their actuals are much less than their potentials, but their potentials were already 92, I believe, before we did this reassessment of their permit. When you add a concrete batch plant, you're looking at another possible 20 tons of PTE. Same consideration as if they ran over for 87, 60 hours. Combine those, and you're above 100 tons, and that's the Title V threshold. So in this permit, because of the combination of these two emitting sources, we had to put a limit in the permit that would keep them below that 100-ton threshold. And for different permits, that limit can be different things. For these, it's a very easy limit. We could have gone a couple different ways, but we basically said for the batch plant, if you limit your cubic yards that you do a year, because that's how we calculate the emissions and how we know what the emissions are. If you keep it below, for this particular one, it's 100, was it 109,000, I believe? I'd have to look back up. But if you stay below that number of cubic yards, you won't exceed the 100 tons. That magic number also happened to be the exact same number. I basically used the same number that they also needed in their permit. If you looked at it, there was a toxics assessment that needed to be done. If they would produce more than 109,000 cubic yards, they would exceed what's called the toxics permitting emission rule. I always get TEPA wrong, but it's basically a limit that the state sets that is a safety limit that says if you exceed this limit of a particular toxic, and in this particular case it's arsenic, if you exceed that limit, then you have to do air quality modeling. If you stay below that limit, we can safely assume you won't have that it's safe for it's a public safety thing. It's safe for the public. You don't have to do any air quality modeling. So there's a lot of facilities that will take a limit, a toxics limit, what we call it, to keep so they avoid having to spend money on doing air quality modeling. In this circumstance, they could have done that. Now, I will say, if you've looked at it, we actually, on the backside, we did do some air quality modeling in-house, because there was an adjacent property that is an asphalt plant that also did model for arsenic. The rules are, when we looked at the rules, we thought, the rules say, hey, if you take the TEPA, you don't have to do any modeling, but we wanted to be a little more proactive just to make sure. So we did modeling. I wasn't that worried about what the modeling result. They're not these two plants, the asphalt plant and this other plant, aren't like right next to each other, so you don't get that concentration. And it's a very large piece of land. So when I ran the model, it actually didn't even affect the worst value because they're so separated. When you do air dispersion modeling, the high points from that are hitting somewhere different than the high points from the other. So we just did that out of an abundance of caution to make sure that we're thinking about the public and everything. So I probably spoke too much.
Thorough explanation. Thank you.
Well, Chad's almost getting to 5, you know.
Any other questions for this, this facility permit modification? If no further questions, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Gary, second by Ned. Any further discussion? None. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes. All right, we're on the backside to new business. It's consideration of Title V Consumer Price Index adjustment. We're allowed to do this annually.
Yeah.
Right, Ashley, if you want to expand on that.
Okay, so every year, we talked about fee changes earlier, and the only way we can change our fees is if we go through rulemaking in the 30-day public notice comment period. However, this is one exception. It's written into our rules in Chapter 17.0200 that every year during the budget process, the board can adjust the Title V fees. There's a Title V tonnage fee that goes along with the other fees, and the board is able to adjust these tonnage fees as with just a vote of the board during the budget process. So we did propose to increase the tonnage fee from $62 per ton of pollution emitted to $64. This is based on what EPA calls the sort of a presumptive minimum fee that they calculate every year. It has some the consumer price index isn't somewhat included. It would result in an additional $5,718. There's numbers in the subsequent tables to show the differences. So we're recommending that the board approve that change, the adjustment for the tonnage fee.
That's tied to the CPI, you said. So where that number comes from, that adjustment number comes from.
Yes, well, let's see.
So it's
See,
a percentage. And so we basically just take last year's fees and we multiply it times that percentage. And so it just goes up, whatever the EPA says the percentage is, it goes up that percentage.
Okay.
So I think,
Which is based
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's-
It's kind of like if you had a building lease and every year
Yeah.
lease rate goes up by
It looked like it
CPI.
went up with the consumer price index.
and it might be a little confusing because in the memo, we also discussed that we did put a CPI adjustment in the rules so that we could also adjust the Title V fees, the other fees. We have flat fees, like certain annual fees. Those get adjusted every year now. We put that in the rules that we could do that. That was a new thing that we've added in 2021. And we would like to sometime, we're not discussing it now, but in the future, we talked about in the last meeting, in fact, adding a CPI adjustment for the other facility fees also, but we haven't done that yet. But that's something we talked about trying to do maybe later this year or next year. But right now, I was just trying to clarify that is, we do adjust those Title V fees every year, and this is an additional tonnage fee adjustment that EPA calculates that also factors in CPI.
So is that this handout here, Ashley or Hannah, is the $5,700, is that the projection that additional revenue we may make this year?
Yes, and we did
Okay.
include that in the budget.
Okay. All right, so we'll need to take action on this. I'll entertain a motion or other questions on it.
So moved.
Yeah, motion. Second by Gary. Any further discussion? All's in favor of making the Title V adjustment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Okay. Other business, Amy?
I don't have a report, but I do have a question. The background is that last year I started working on new bylaws for you, and then of course Hurricane Helene sort of interrupted everything. I'm happy to get back to those, because you did mention a few minutes ago that they are antiquated, and I agree. Did you want to add, and you don't have to tell me right now, but did you want to consider adding the option for Zoom meetings, for either regular meetings or special meetings? If so, I can certainly add those in a way that you would like. Cause for example, we could do this special meeting on a Zoom meeting if you had that option, and I think
Right.
that would make it easier for other people to attend.
But I think that would not be a good idea.
Okay, and
I think
anything
it'd be
that
a great idea.
and anything that I give you is not set in stone. I mean, I think you're gonna have to adopt them. So when I give you a draft, you can, ask me
So-
for changes.
I guess I'd like to think that other adjustments to our bylaws, we could do it all at the same time. I don't know how extensive this needs to be.
Yeah,
So
the
you may have a
changes,
feel for it too.
the changes are gonna be actually fairly minimal. They're antiquated, but they're in line with the bylaws of most of the other organizations. There's just some minor tweaks I need to make, largely having to do with technology. And just sort of the way things are kind of done now than they were when these bylaws were adopted, I think in the 2000, something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, if you give Ashley a list of things that you'd like me to add, I can certainly add those, make sure that they are legally compliant, and give you a draft.
I'd suggest that maybe Ashley and I can get together and maybe look at the bylaws and then give you some direction.
And I'm happy to meet with you
Perhaps.
anytime you'd like.
And then maybe, or even the three of us maybe meet
Sure.
and kind
And
of
I-
scrub through them.
So do you when you worked on it before, I think you might already have somewhat of a draft, or?
I do. It's only about 3/4 of the way done.
I think there were certain things like we used to print board packets and mail them, and it still says that in the bylaws, but we quit doing that years ago. So it's kind of no brainer.
Yeah, those are the things. There's some notice requirements that I've changed to have published on the website as opposed to published on the door. Again, these are all largely technologically related, but we can go. I'll make the changes, and we can then meet, and if there's anything that stands out, I'm happy
Okay.
to
No, that'd be
redraft.
Yeah, that'd be great. And maybe to put a schedule to it, maybe we could maybe be prepared by the September meeting.
Oh,
Would that be
yes.
too,
Yes, that's
to maybe
perfectly
present, some bylaw adjustments? Okay,
happy to do it.
all right. Anything else?
Nothing.
Legal? Okay. Advisory committee report. We've got advisory committee is off and running again under Ned Gutman's leadership. So turn it over to him for a report.
We actually had a meeting after 8 months of no meetings, and everybody on the committee showed up. Most of us in person, one not in person. And we did hold it in the new building, and there were some technology issues with that room, which I assume will be corrected sometime in the future. But essentially, the main thing we talked about was the Clean Air Excellence Awards. There were two companies that submitted a report for the award. One was Eaton, and they had received an award in the past, but they have a new facility. And this is in Avery's Creek. And they're applying for the award based on what they're doing at that facility, not the main facility. It's basically their environmental stewardship, which has always been good. And and they're cooperating with other companies in Raleigh and everybody else. And we asked them for more data, which they have just given us. But second one was the footprint project, which is a little bit unusual. This is a project that was set up for the Helene cleanup. And what this company did was provide energy to those with medical needs, CPAP users, oxygen users, that sort of thing. And they've done a whole lot of work along those lines, which is not really air quality, but it is kind of on the outside connected to it. They've done a lot of work in sustainable cleanup efforts, so it prevents a lot of burning and other things. And Keith Bamberger, who is on the advisory committee, has worked with this group in his role with state air quality agency and spoke very highly of the work they're doing. So the committee recommended giving an award to both of them in appropriate categories for Ashley to determine how to split up the categories. And we felt that both companies were worthwhile getting the award. Other things we talked about, Caitlin gave us a presentation on the UNCA sensors, and essentially in these days of environmental injustice, their EPA grant was turned down. But the current sensors are still operating and hopefully will be maintained and,
There's one that Steve told me,
yeah,
which I forgot about.
yeah.
I had a question, was that grant that was denied, was that for the purple air, or was that for was it Raspberry Pi or?
I don't remember which sensor we were going to use, but it was for the one that we were going to use, like the school buses and drive around and kind of find the air quality. And definitely had an environmental justice lens that I think with the current administration, right, was turned down. So yeah.
And the other thing we talked about, Ashley gave us an update of what the agency was doing and staffing, and also provided a tour of the offices and the other building. She has told all of us what she told us in the advisory committee, so I don't need to go through that again. And that's about it.
Any questions for Ned?
In the past, the committee makes a recommendation about the Clean Air Excellence Awards. Some years, I think the board has voted, and some years they haven't. I don't know if you guys want to vote or not, but we are recommending that we give the awards to those two companies.
Let's formalize it, Joe. All those in favor of awarding the Clean Air? Oh, getting off the Robert's orders again. Is there a motion to award the Clean Air Excellence Awards to the two companies that Ned mentioned?
So moved. Second.
We'll let you motion it, Ned. Since it's
Okay.
the Advisory committee. Gary, a second. All right. Any further discussion? You got that right, Hannah?
Ned motion, Gary second.
Perfect. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes. All right, let's look at our calendar. We've got a June 17th meeting, right, at 4 o'clock, special meeting.
Can you tell if the rooms, I'm sure the room's probably available, but it shouldn't be a problem. I'm sure we can find a room if this one's not. It should be available.
And I'm suggesting the next meeting after that would be July 10th, according to the first Thursday of the month. But I'm proposing they could go 2 weeks after that, since we're going to meet in July or June again, to the 24th. And I know for one, Gary can't make the 10th anyway. So would the 24th at 4 o'clock work for the rest of us? Okay. I'd propose to make that the regular meeting in July as opposed to the 10th. So the 24th instead of the 10th. So we'll do that. Hopefully Carol can slot in on both those meetings. Any announcements by the board members? Anybody have anything for the good of the board? Okay. We're down to public comment, and we actually have people that want to publicly comment. We got Drew Weston and Patty Beaver of Council of Independent Business Owners.
She made us sign that because we were here.
Those
Oh, well,
I see it says sign in.
Well, that's disappointing. I thought you had something really.
See, she did sign in and then it's not public.
Oh, I'm looking at the
But,
wrong thing.
yes.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. We don't have public comment much here, so that's, anyway, well, most of the time it's controversial, so maybe it's good.
Well, thanks for being here.
All right, we're down to the end and we're a little bit over time, but I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion by Gary,
Second.
second by Ned. All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
We're adjourned. Thanks for coming.